I'm joined today by Joe Murray, who's a constitutional attorney and author of the book Odd Man Out. Joe is an experienced trial attorney, and he also spent a number of years working on the Christian right, working with the likes of Pat Buchanan, the Alliance Defending Freedom, and the American Family Association. He has since come out of the closet as a gay man and has a very, very interesting story to share with us. So, Joe, how did you first even get involved with these right-wing groups?
Well, that's a great question. In 1999, in between college and law school, I joined up with Pat Buchanan, and I worked on his campaign. And I saw that all the way through to the Iowa straw polls, where unfortunately Pat did not do well. I think we came in fifth, but Gary Bauer beat us. That was kind of the icing on the cake. And that's when Pat had decided to go to the Reform Party. And as much as I would have loved to have kept my pitchfork in hand, I decided I was going to go to law school. In law school, I got accepted into what's called the Blackstone Fellowship, which is a fellowship that was created by the Alliance Defense Fund, they're now Alliance Defending Freedom. And the whole purpose was to identify talented Christian lawyers, bring them to basically a summer workshop, and train them to be litigators or potential judicial clerks so they could change the culture from the courts. They were basically trying to do what the left had done so many decades before them. And that's what introduced me to AFA. And after I graduated law school, that's when I got the offer to go to AFA. And that's what kind of got the ball rolling at that point.
So were you kind of self-aware of your sexual orientation your entire life?
Well, that's a great question. And I would say no. I mean, I always knew deep down inside, but, when I was going up through high school, I was your typical young Republican. I had the sweater vest and, with the Bush campaign, and then I was with Buchanan and doing all this stuff. I mean, really being gay didn't fit into the image that I was creating. So I always knew subconsciously it was there. And I'm not a psychiatrist, but I would guess that one of the reasons I was attracted to a lot of the conservative lifestyle, so to speak, is because I kept to tell myself, look, you can't be gay if you're working with Pat Buchanan. You can't be gay if you're working for Don Wildman. It just doesn't make sense. But you can only run from reality for so long.
So, like you said, your entire life, you at least had some sense that this was your reality. But at the same time, you're legally representing groups like the American Family Association who believe that sexual orientation is a choice, or at least to the extent that being gay is a choice, that side of sexual orientation is a choice. So what was your day-to-day like? This seems like it would be a huge internal conflict.
Well, what brought me to AFA to begin with was really not even the gay issue, because when I got to AFA, the same-sex marriage issue, that really wasn't on the table yet. I was really drawn to them from the pro-life standpoint. I wanted to help represent those that were either sidewalk counseling or trying to help folks make informed decisions. And when I first got there, that was my life at one point. I was doing a lot of these pro-life cases down there. But what happened was, with the Massachusetts decision and then Gavin Newsom, the same-sex marriage issue just engulfed the right, and I'm including AFA with that. And what I mean that is that there was like a gay gold rush, and they were looking for the pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. Because they knew that this was the issue they could fundraise on. This was the issue that they could pull in the dollars. And that's why AFA and ADF, they were clobbering each other to try to get these cases to represent in the courts so they could get a footing on this issue and be the kind of the kingmaker.
But let's talk about that. That's super interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit. So internally, externally, these groups often say this is an issue of morals, this is an issue of ethics and scripture and so on and so forth. But you're saying internally, there were very candid discussions where the rush to jump over opposition to same-sex marriage was actually based in recognizing that was a really great wedge issue around which money could be raised.
Yeah, here's the deal. AFA did not like ADF when I worked there. Our attorneys that I worked with did not like the ADF attorneys. They thought ADF was trying to become the Christian right juggernaut, so they would be able to call all the shots from Scottsdale. And with that view, you understood that if you were going to be taken seriously, you had to be representing the cases that were getting the headlines. And as much as I enjoyed representing a sidewalk counselor in Birmingham, Alabama, the New York Times, the LA Times, the Post, these folks didn't give two rips about that. What were they covering? They were covering these marriage cases out there in Washington State, Gavin Newsom. All of this stuff was getting all the attention. And that's where your fundraising is, because your public interest law firm, whether you're on the right or whether you're on the left, is only as good as that headline case. And that interest, that is why at AFA, they knew they had to try to get in on this issue. Because if you didn't get in on the marriage issue, you stick a fork in you, you're done. And that's eventually what happened to the AFA Law Center, because it shut down because ADF was able to basically size up its monopoly on the Christian right, and you either withered on the vine or you joined them. But you are 100% right. That's what I was saying, is that there was this internal strife that whether or not there was a moral issue involved, at the end of the day, there was always a money issue involved.
And now that you're out as a gay man, what's your relationship like, if it even exists, with any of these types of groups? I mean, are you still getting calls to do legal work with some of these groups?
No, I'm not on the Christmas card list. Not to say, look, I had lunch in December with Steve Crampton, or was it December or November? He was the AFA's chief counsel when I was there. I don't hold any ill will toward these folks, and look, they're doing what they're doing. I question the rhetoric they use. You look at what goes on at Liberty Counsel. You look at what goes on at some of these groups when they compare gay folks to Sandusky, and they go for this reparative therapy malarkey. And, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But I've learned, one of the things that I've learned being in this business is that I am not going to let this stuff get to me.
Well, but I understand. I understand not wanting it to get to you. But at the same time, when you say you hold no ill will, these are groups that want you as a gay man to legally have a different set of rights than someone who identifies as heterosexual. So the day-to-day, if they got their way, would directly impact you. I don't know how you can say you don't like the rhetoric, but you don't have any ill will towards them.
I guess because I view them as the crazy uncle at the wedding who gets drunk and does karaoke. They're not going to have the day. I would be stunned if these folks won the day. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to let them have the day. And this is a very important point. If you look what's going on in these organizations, such as Liberty Counsel and National Organization for Marriage, they're going overseas now. Okay, they're looking at more conservative cultures such as South America, Africa, Moscow. They're going overseas because I think in their hearts they know that they have lost. And one of the reasons I can say that is because when we first got in on this issue, and I was working with AFA, they were arguing from a position of strength. 2003, 2004, the nation was not where it is today. You had Will and Grace, you had all this stuff on TV that had started to basically undemonize gay America, but then I would probably be pretty firm in saying that the nation wasn't ready there for full marriage equality. Well, 12 years later, I think we are. And I don't think we're in the same game anymore, because if you look at how the right is now arguing, they're arguing from a position of defense. They're panicking. And what they've done is they've created their own little counterculture of these Christian folks who they'll only buy Christian newspapers, they only listen to Christian radio, they only watch Christian movies. It's why Kirk Cameron has a career now. These folks are dwindling. They're not in the majority. So I don't worry about them having the day, because I don't think they got it. And to a certain degree, I just feel sorry for them. I don't really have anger for them. I really have pity for them.
Last thing I want to talk about in the limited time we have left is what are your political views outside of this issue of gay marriage? Because there's clips up on your website of you saying things that to me strike me as incredibly extreme. For example, you equated abortion to the killing of Jews in Auschwitz during World War II. You said that you think we should just put up a fence at the Mexican border, something that's been widely debunked as just something that doesn't work by the consensus of experts. Are you still kind of like a big-time right-winger on other issues, or have you stepped away from all of those views?
No, I mean, what I do is I like to look at the issue. You're right. I do think that when you have innocent unborn children and they are being killed every day, and they are, I do think that's a travesty. And I
Well,
think
but that's not the medical
is up
consensus.
there with the Holocaust.
The medical consensus on that issue is not that, right? So the medical consensus outside of some fringe groups is that
Well,
the killing of Jews in Auschwitz bears no resemblance whatsoever to the legal medical procedure of an abortion.
well, it depends on when you're having that abortion done. Is when the medical consensus begins to shift as
No
you get
question
later
about
into
it, but
term of pregnancy, when
the
fetus can
focus on
shift
late term
and it
abortions are
responds to health.
incredibly rare and are done only when it is an absolute
Well, I
medical
would include
necessity.
even in second trimester. And I would say even in the second trimester. But to get to your question of where I go on these issues, I do believe that abortion is murder, and that's a firm belief. I do believe that immigration is a problem. I do believe that defense will not cure the problem, but it's a step in the right direction of making sure we have legal, just immigration. But then you flip the coin. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we have criminalized marijuana use in this country. I think it greatly impacts African Americans at a disproportionate rate. I think our criminal justice system is filled up with marijuana charges and resources are being drained. I think in terms of trade, I think it's ridiculous that we believe that there's a notion of free trade and that we've given away the keys to the store to nations like China who are using our trade deficits to build up their army and their adversaries. So I don't like to limit myself to being in one party or one ideology. I like to look at these issues and see how they impact me, how they impact America, and how they'll impact the people of this country. And that's what the point of this book is. I don't want everybody to agree with me. I became a lawyer so people don't agree with me. I like to argue, but I do want people to understand that just because you're gay doesn't mean that you have to toe the line and do everything the Obama presidency or the Democratic Party tells you to do. And the same thing with just because you're Christian doesn't mean you have to have George Bush bobbleheads on your desk. I think we need to look at the issues and not necessarily the ideology.
All right, we've been speaking with Joe Murray. The book is Odd Man Out. A very, very interesting story. Thanks for being on, Joe.